Good morning, Rabbi Sai. Feeling gewaldig. Mamish gewaldig. No, be'emes, I have such a curse at Tov. Lidin nishmas imi merosi ruspas Mordechai. I have a curse at Tov, Shen Kamayu. I thought I wouldn't be able to prepare. I wouldn't be able to anything. I think it's just a regular cold. I actually came out negative on the corona, on the COVID. We have to do more tests maybe, but meanwhile, we're doing great. Rabbi Sai, I have an unbelievable email here that every word is gold. Every word. I wrote this individual, Erev Shabbos, begging him to let me use his name. He gave me a good reason why he doesn't want his name, and I guess it's understood from the email itself. He brought a bunch of people into the shir, and he doesn't want to hurt their whatever. Okay, so I respect that. Be'ezer Hashem, I'm not going to slip his name. It says like this. It's a long one, but I think every word is worth it over here. As you often mention, the best gift that someone can give you is bring someone else to the shir. I have a tremendous akar satov to you for teaching me 187 blat Gemara so far. It's not easy for me to tune in every day, and I can imagine it's even harder to give this year. I don't know if you remember me, but I also appreciate the video you made for my son when we met in Borough Park and enjoyed the shmoos we had then. So much so that I've decided to go against my nature. And as a akar satov to you, my goal is to get 2 people to join the shir for every new Masechta we learn. I don't want to get everyone at once because I want to keep getting free Gemara's smiley face. Baruch Hashem, I've been successful in my goal and convinced around 15 people so far to join. So again, what you see here is Chachma. Take it easy. To a Masechta, have a goal, set a goal, and go for that goal. Nothing crazy, nothing small, not one person, 2 people. And so far, what does he have? 15 people. Since Sukkah. Some of them who haven't even finished one Masechta in their lives, and now thanks to you made their first siyumim. I spoke and continue to speak to Rabbanim, Rebbes, Rabbeim, explaining to them the virtues of your shir and how not only is learning the daf online not a threat, but as you mentioned, it's a mindset of taking time previously not capitalized on and dedicating it to Hashem. And then ask them to direct people in their kahal, in klal, chasidus, and yeshiva to your shir. The kunz is, I'm using his lashon, the kunz is not only to get people to try the shir, but to follow up and make sure they don't drop out. And this guy's a chachamatzum. He follows up on these people. He doesn't just get them to come and then get the free Gemara and Shalom Yisrael. He follows up. As most people are joining haven't learned the word in years, and the learning muscles that need to be worked out. I'm telling you, every word is gold. Their learning muscles need to be worked out. One of the big challenges I found was similar to what my mechutin, and I took out his name, was speaking about. He wrote a beautiful email recently that the Yetzer Hara of the former yeshiva man, who doesn't even realize that he's not where he used to be. And he says, the vart that I use successfully is that during Makas Dam, where did the Khartoumim get water to show paroi that they can turn into blood? All the water was already blood. The answer I heard is that they didn't actually turn water into blood because they had no water. So they did what they did. They asked Pari asked them, they can turn water into blood. And said they're not impressed because they could do it too. When he asked them to demonstrate that they couldn't because they had no water. So they told Paroi that they really can do the same thing, but we punked, those are his words, we punked don't have water. But in their heads, they were convinced that they were just like Moshe Rabbeinu, even though he was doing something they weren't. You hear what he's saying? I'm punked, a yeshiva guy that knows Kol HaTorah Kula because I used to learn in yeshiva 20 years ago. I just don't have water. When I meet someone who learned Be'iyun in the top yeshivas many years ago, in his head, he's the same guy who learns 18 hours a day and would never learn a Daf B'Kiyos, especially with a guy who doesn't even learn Rashi inside. He only learns with Reb Chaim Stenslach. Oh, this is gold. Reb Chaim Stenslach, if you ever learned in yeshiva, Reb Chaim Stenslach. That's all he learns. The only issue is that he, punked, didn't open up a sefer in the last 10 years. But besides for that minor issue, he sees himself, the Moshe Rabbeinu, he sees himself and Moshe Rabbeinu was mamish the same. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. It is so true that it makes me cry because I know people that I spoke to that literally don't open up a sefer, but in their minds, they're yeshiva light. And yeshiva light don't learn daf. The daf is for the balabatim. He's not a balabas. He happens to do a lot of business during the day, 24 hours a day, and doesn't have a minute to learn Torah, but he's not going to learn the daf. Most of the time when people realize that the neshomas are starving, and Daf Yomi is not about the daf, but about the Yomi, it's not beneath them. It's Torah that's kihem chayenu. They are ready to try this year. If I wasn't convinced in the message, I wouldn't be able to go over to random people and ask them if they do the daf, if they have any Torah in their lives, and why not try this year. He goes over to random people, this guy. A regular chabatzker in training, smiley face. Cute story. I love this story too. I got someone to join the David and Chavruso, was the yeshiva man, was putting down the shir to him, telling him it doesn't pass, etc. The guy came over to me and didn't know what to do. Baruch Hashem, I convinced him to ignore the maligim, and continue learning. I met his Chavruso and explained to him that in no way are we looking to compare a balabas learning Daf Yomi an hour a day to a man learning a whole day, sacrificing his needs and wants for Torah. Rather, it's about every yid having a neshoma that needs Torah, and how Yeshir is feeding souls and connecting Yidden to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yiddishkeit is not a competition between you and me. It's a competition with our previous selves, says this choshve guy. It's a competition with our previous selves. Once he understood that his way of life was no longer under attack, he accepted the rationale and listened to the punchline. And I'm proud to tell you that he joined the shir himself. Wild Stuff Man, thank you. Wild Stuff Man was him also. I'm not going to say his name. So, Rabbi Isai, we're here 5 days before the start of the new Masechta. If you want to give back, you don't have to write a check. You don't have to sponsor a shir. If you want to give a little back, it's a win-win-win situation, a 3-win. You get a guy to join the shir, and the schar that you will have for bringing this person to Torah, and that guy's schar, and you're giving me also, so it's a win-win-win. And because you brought a guy to the shir, you get a Gemara, a free one, and that guy gets a Gemara, and I get to say there's another guy in the shir. So it's geschmack. It's a win-win-win. So I don't understand how a person could sit idle, literally idle, watch his friend just do nothing all day and not say a word. It's mamish pikuach nefesh. You go over to him, you put it in your status, send him a text message, pick up the phone, go out of your comfort zone, get that guy. Rabbi Isai, 5 more days to Mayit Katan. The smallest, one of the smallest Masechtas, 29 days. That's it. All right. Rabbi Isai, you can also take bulk if you want. If you're mamish inspired, take the bulk. Go to growmdy.com. Go to joinmdy.com for the new guys. Here we go. What do we have today? Very short. Parents HaChodesh for the Koilol is Chaim. Leading neshoma Yeshua, Aryeh, Leyva, Kohen, Ben Yonis, and Chaim. Can't tell. Yesterday I was schwitzing away. Let's see. Ooh. I need to put on the heat over here because I'm sick. I don't know if you can see. 78 degrees right now. Close to 79. It was 80 the whole morning here. If not, I start coughing. So I have to drink some tea. I hope you don't mind. Zogt, the sponsorship. I heard encouraging news. There's a tick to the right side, I hope, with our Yedid. Maseches Megillah, the Davis and Kessler families in zchues Refuah shleima for Miriam Esther as Devora. Maseches Megillah by Shmuly Hecht, F245. This Mordechai, Shlema, Pink's Tubia, Ben Avraham Moshe Peres Ner Yair. The neshoma should have an aliyah. Rabbi Isai, here we go. I have pictures and stuff. We'll show them tomorrow. I think this message is very, very important. Get your friend. Don't push it off. Don't do it now in middle shir, but get your friend. Today's Daf Chof Ches Koyach. We are holding the last words on Amud Beis, Chof Zayin Amud Beis. Beautiful Gemaras. Shalu Talmidoves Rebbe Predo B'meh Harachta Yomim. Rebbe Predo. What is Rebbe Predo famous for? He taught his student his Talmud 400 times. And a Baskol came out and said, either you live 400 years or your entire generation is going to be zechus olam haba. And he chose my entire generation for olam haba. Omer lahem, how's I zechus arichas yamim? Miyomai lekudmani adam lebeis hamedrash. Never in my life did somebody come before me to the Beis HaMedrash. I was always the first one. I would need to repeat the word I said at the tail end of yesterday's shir. It was a very long shir. Maybe not, some of you didn't have the patience to get there, so I got to tell you this word. I love it. What is the tzad hashava? What's the common denominator between the many, many things the Gemara brings? How does a person live a long life? This one didn't go to the bathroom where he davened. This one didn't make a shortcut through his this. And some of them have 3 things, 4 things. What's going on here? How many things? Arichas Yamim. The common denominator, l'chayra. Well, you could say, the first thing that came to my mind was, they all went above the letter of the law. These are not halachas. These are chumras. Okay. But there's a beautiful thing here that's negea to us. The word miyamai. My entire life, I kept this chumrah my entire life. Every day, day in, day out. A tamid. It's a keves echot aseva. Like you're going to see in a second. It's a tamid. Every day. And that's what Daf Yomi is. And I said that l'chayr it's a ben b'noi shekav v'chaymer. If a person didn't bench in front of a kohen his entire life, and that's why zechus arichas yamim. So if a person learns the heilige Torah every day, miyamai, I never miss a day. Never ever do I miss a day. Miyamai. Then Allah has kama v'kama. He's zechus Torah mabah. And we actually, that's the last words in Daf Amud Beis, the famous Tonan Devei Eliyahu. Kol Hashem Allah is b'chol yom. You learn Torah every day. He's zechus Torah mabah. Continues the Gemara. And we're holding on top of Daf Amud Aleph. V'lo birachti lifnei kohen. I never said the Birkas Hamazon in those days. You said Rabbi Sainav Oreich, and you continue. Baruch atah Hashem. You were mighty everybody else. But if there was a kohen present, I didn't do so. Why? So let me just get to the charts, get through all the pictures and the emails. Here we go. The famous pasuk, Vikidashtoi. This is about a kohen. You have a chiyuv to honor the kohen. He goes in front of you for this, for that. And memela, if there's a kohen, let him bench. Says Reb Preda, I never did in front. Now ask Toises, what do you mean? Reb Preda was zaychet ha'olam haba to arichas yamim. 400 years he lived because he taught the student for 400 times. What are you telling me? Toises over here says that perhaps HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the one that said, since you chose that your generation should get olam haba, I'm giving you arichas yamim. But Reb Preda never knew that. He only figured it out later on in his life. He realized he's not dying. Everybody else is dying. Another Teres Toises says in Erevin is hava hagarma. It's a combination of 2 things. So back in the day, I don't know when it was. I didn't do the calculation. Let's say 2.5 years ago, when we were learning chulin, we shechted a carbon for the shear. A carbon. We shechted an animal, I should say, not a carbon. And here I am with a bowl. Since I bought the animal with my own money, so it was my animal. First time in my life, I took the matanos, which you do in our day today. The zroya, the foreleg, the lochayayim, the jaw, and the keva, the intestines. Put in a bowl. This yellow thing is a bag because the intestines were in there. And I gave it to my chavrusa. This is Rabbi Yedidia Kramer, who's married to a daughter of a kohen. And you could give the gift to a Yisrael who's married to a daughter of a kohen till this very day. So I was mekayim that mitzvah once in my lifetime. And I wouldn't eat from it until I gave those matanos. Just like you can't eat from produce before you give truma and meiser, so too he says you can't eat from an animal before you give meiser. Now, we're saying these are all above and beyond the law. So then what's the big deal that he didn't eat? No one eats before the next line. It's as if you ate produce without giving trumas and meiser. Oh, we pass and you see it says in the Shulchan Aruch, the Aleph over there. You could eat before you give the matanos. And memela, he went above the law. And memela, that's why he was zoicha tarichas yamim. And I didn't bench in front of a kohen. You say what? It was a big deal. You hear this? If you have a kohen gadol, greatest Jew supposedly alive, but he's Amoritz, so he's not so great, you're not allowed to give him the kavod. You can't give him the honor. You can't say, oh, you're the kohen gadol bench, and if you do so, you're a Talmid Chacham and you do so, chayiv misa, shenemar kol misanai ahavu maves. All those who hate the Torah, they love death. You hate Torah, you love death. But look at the lashon. It doesn't say kol soinai, all my haters. It says misanai with a mem. So the Gemara learns al tikri misanai elo masniai. It's those who cause hatred. We have this a number of times. If a Talmid Chacham behaves improperly, what is everybody going to do? The first thing the media goes and says, look, the Jew did this, the rabbi did that. Immediately they go to the rabbi, they love it, So you are causing a chilul Hashem. You are causing people to say that a kohen gadol am haaretz is greater than a rabbi, than a Talmid Chacham. That is chiyuv misa Rabbi Isai. So you got to be careful. So what's the big deal? They're afraid to never. What do you mean? He has to make the benching. What do you mean he never benched in front of the kohen? Never. What he never had an am haaretz, somebody that's not the Talmid Chacham that ate by his meal. So why would he give that kohen that's not a Talmid Chacham? Why would he give him benching? It's a chilul Hashem. What he meant is when he was a Talmid Chacham, not literally equal to Reb Preida, because if it was equal, then he's mechuyev to give it to the kohen, because he's just as great as Reb Preida plus he's a kohen, he gets v'kidashte. Meaning he was on a level. He was another Rosh Hashiva somewhere, not as great as Reb Preida. Nevertheless, Reb Preida wouldn't bench, he would give it to that kohen. So maybe you should remember this name because it's going to come up in a minute. They asked Reb Nechunya ben Akana, the same Gemara, we're going through Agadata now. I never benefited off the downfall of my friend. The Gemara is going to explain. I never went to sleep when my friend cursed me. In other words, I was moichel everybody before I went to sleep. And I always gave in when it came to money. The Gemara explains. What does that mean? Rav Huna was carrying a shovel, a hoe on his shoulder. And I said last night that we should remember this name. Remember on Amud Aleph we had these two names on the bottom. Rav Huna and Rav Chana bar Chanilai. Here they come again. Nothing to do with yesterday's sugi. That what? Rav Chana bar Chanilai wanted to give honor to Rav Huna, was the Gala Dart. Remember we had the story. Rav Huna was very short. His daughters threw the silk on him. Says Rav Chana bar Chanilai, give me the shovel. I want to schlep it, Rebbe. The Kadari Minei. Amalei, I can't give it to you. If this is you commonly schlep a shovel around in the street, Dari. Today you can do so as well. But if you never carry a shovel, you just want to do it for me, for me to become bigger and better because of you becoming smaller, that I don't want. A lot of times we find ourselves, we become higher by putting down the next guy. That's miskabel b'kloi chavera. You want to be great, but don't do it on the cheshbon of your friend. What does that mean? The Marzutra could have a solik lepurye Omar Marzutra right before he went to sleep. Shari lei lekol man de mitzara. I'm moichel every single person who's mitzara me. Vatrin, there was a story, I don't know if we have time. Do we have time here? Quick story. There was a rebbitzin of a city. She was in line, and the rich woman of the city, the wealthy woman, she just overtook her in line and said something nasty to her. The wife was very, very sad. So they said, go to your husband. No, my husband, he's not going to care. So they said, on Shabbos, don't wear Shabbos clothing. So she comes in the Shabbos meal, and he says, what's going on here? Why aren't you wearing your Shabbos clothes? She says, oh, this and this happened to me. He says, oh, it's terrible. When did it happen? She said, on Tuesday. On Tuesday. And from Tuesday till now, you said Kriyash Malamita, and you said I'm moichel to everybody, and you didn't mean it? So he's a big chacham and pekeach. He said, listen, we got to go to that person and ask her mechila that we weren't moichel her. They go there, they knock on the door. Of course, you know the end of the story. Knocks on the door. We're here to ask you mechila. 3 days went by, and we didn't really have it in mind. We thought we were moichel, but we're not. She said, what are you talking? So the wealthy woman asked them mechila, and they made up, and everything is great. But the point is, before you go to sleep, don't go to sleep in a fight. Vatrim b'mamoneh, you see, what does it mean? I gave in when it came to mammon is domar mar. Iyov vatrim b'mamoneh have Iyov used to give in. Sheminiach pruta lechem b'mamoneh. When I was learning it, I said I have to look it up again. I didn't look it up. I remember that Eoiv was mevater on a half a pruta. I might be completely mistaken. I thought it was a half a pruta. Over here it says pruta, but I forgot to look it up. So, whatever. I'll look it up later. Maybe somebody will send it to me. So what's interesting is that Rebbe Kiva asked Rebbe Nechunya Agadol, who's Rebbe Nechunya Agadol? So they say, it's the same Rebbe Nechunya that I said to remember his name 10 lines before, Rebbe Nechunya ben Hakana. The only issue I have with it is that when Rebbe Kiva asked him, as we're going to see, his answer was different than Rebbe Nechunya ben Hakana. Maybe that's why others don't learn like that. Okay. So he asked Rebbe Nechunya ben Hakana, or Rebbe Nechunya Agadol, how are you zechus? What's the trick? He had gabayim. They started beating up Rebbe Kiva. Rebbe Kiva was a younger person then. He wasn't the Rebbe Kiva that we know. They beat him up. Rebbe Kiva Solak Yosef Aresha Didikla, he ran up a palm tree. He didn't want to die. He didn't want to get beat up by these guys. And from the palm tree, he screams down, Rebbe, to Rebbe Nechunya. Im nemar keves loma nemar echad. So, the famous pasuk, well, it doesn't hurt to see it inside. Keves is a singular. Don't say kvasim. So then why do they say echad? Echad and keves are the same. Oh, so Rebbe Nechunya realizes that he's dealing here with a Talmud Chacham. That is a great kasha. Amalahu, tzurmin de rabbananu, shifku, leave him alone. Don't beat him up. He's a Talmud Chacham. And he answers him. Amalei echad miyuchad shebadroi. Echad doesn't mean one. It means the one. The better one. When you bring a keves echad in the morning for carbon tamid, in the afternoon, bring the best one. Omalei, so I'll answer you. Since you're Talmud Chacham, let me answer you. I never received a gift, and I wasn't makbid on people. Some of these are similar to what he said before, but not 100. And I gave in with money. I didn't take gifts. Loy have a shakel. When the Nasi would give matanis, I have here some of matanis I got. I want to show you real quickly. These you could give. There's Beseder. Epicenter. What do we have? Yeah. Woohoo, the first, the original, from California. Harry Shalom took this off his truck while I was there. Give it to him. And of course, Amarit. And it keeps on going. Eretz Yisrael, 8-minute daf. Nobody has in English. I'm the only one that has an Israeli license plate with English. England, Givaldic. Okay, whatever. You don't have to send wine. What you need to do is, no wine. Get another guy to the daf. Oh. When they invite him over to the Nasi's house, I don't want to eat from him. Why are you sending me gifts? You want to kill me? So there's a big need on here, real quickly. Could somebody take money for learning in a koil? The Rambam says it's the biggest thing, biggest isser in the world. Terrible, terrible, terrible to take money from learning. However, all the Achronim, the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah, the Shulchan Aruch Harav, they all paskin, you're allowed to take money for learning. In fact, Reb Moshe Feinstein writes that if you pretend you're a chassid because of the Rambam and don't take money for koilo, it's a terrible thing, he says. It's a atzes hayetzer, he says. If you want to look this Reb Moshe up, he says a beautiful lashon. Maybe I'll read it for you. It's in Yeridei Chelik Beis Siman Kuf Tez Zayin. He says, "Umiyitem va'ayu nimtzoim anoshim isnadvim l'loimdim harbe tamid chacham." Maybe I have the lashon wrong over here, but the point is I can't even read my own handwriting. Halavai, there should be more people that give money to koilel. Misrabim b'nei Torah g'doylei Yisrael. It's going to cause more b'nei Torah, more g'doylim, more moirei halacha. And then he says, Hashem Yisbarach, ein loi ba'olamai. Hashem only has in his world, daled amoy shel halacha bilvad. Does Reb Moshe Feinstein support those who are learning Torah? Says the Gemara, so you don't have the Sonim Matanis Yichya on supporting Torah. Reb Zera, Kav Mishaz B'Lim B'Bein Nesiya, the same thing, but different. When they would send Reb Zera a gift from the Nasi, like have a shakel, Daddy did the same thing as Reb Elazar. But the second part, but when they invited him to a meal, Ozil, Omar is a curi of the Misakrabi. Imagine if Reb Chaim Kanievsky shows up to a meal, or the Belzer Rebbe, the Gerrit, whatever, a big chosh of a yid shows up. So who's benefiting? Reb Chaim Kanievsky is going to benefit from the schnitzel, or the person throwing the meal. So I come to the Nasi, I give him covet, not the other way around. I wasn't makbid. What does it mean? If you are mevater to the other person, Hashem is going to be mevater to you, as it says in the pasuk. The Gemara darshans. Lemi noisa avain. Who's HaKadosh Baruch Hu moichel? Lemi she'over al pesha. It's a midah keneged midah. If you are not so tic-tacky with your friend, so Hashem won't be with you either. I want to tell you a private thing, more private thing. Nobody's listening, so I could tell you, I guess. But Eitza Taiva, because it's more than this ruchnis thing, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I think it's even a Gashmi thing, because I had this experience. Somebody did a really not nice thing to me and my family this past summer. I think it was out of jealousy, whatever. I don't know what the reason is. And I was trying to learn those days. I was trying to prepare the shir, and the guys kept on jumping onto my Gemara. I couldn't knock him off. Every time I wanted to learn, he's there, and I'm going to do this to him and that to him. I'm going to get him back. And the moment I decided to be mevater, and I'm saying this not as a gaiva, as a eitza toiva in this world, just a practical thing. I heard goyim say it all the time. When you could forgive, you not that I'm going to forgive the monetary loss that he caused or whatever, but the tsar, dagmas nefesh, when you could forgive, all of a sudden, the minute I said I forgive, that minute I was able to concentrate. The guy meant zero to me. He never jumped back on my Gemara. Never. But for days, he was there, and he caused me such aggravation until I realized you got to put in the past. Put in the past, then it's over lemi noisa over and lemi over al pesha. It's not only a ruchnius, it's a physical thing also. Shal Rebbe is Yeshua ben Karcha b'merach diyamim. Omerlei katzav v'chayai. So Rebbe asked Rebbe Yeshua ben Karcha, same kind of thing that they told Rebbe Kiva. What? You don't want me to live? What do you mean? How did you live so long? Omerlei Rebbe, toirahi v'limudani tzarch. I want to imitate you. I want to do what you're doing so I can also live long. Oh, okay. Omerlei miyamah nistakalti b'dmus adam rasha. I never looked at a rasha. I'm throwing this out there. I don't know if this includes movies. You watch a movie, you're going to see Rishayim. These actors are Rishayim. These are bad people. Are you allowed to look at it? I don't know. Maybe not. As this idea of not looking at a tselem like a tsalam, like a movie. Don't say don't look at a rasha. It says the tselem, fine. Just throwing it out there. Shenemar, lule pneyo shafat melech Yehuda ani noisei. So Elisha says to Yaram, if not for the fact that he's shafat, he's a king, I wouldn't look at him. I wouldn't look at you. If you look at a rasha, your eyes become weak. Yitzchak became old and his eyes became weak because he looked at his own son, Esav. In fact, the Gemara of a Garmalay, that's what caused it. Where do we have this? On Daf Tesvav, just a few weeks ago. It's because of Avimelech that Yitzchak's eyes became weak. He cursed Sarah, and it happened to Sarah's kid. So I'll take riksus, not a garment. The covering of that. Says Gemara of a Garmalay. You're right. It's two things: Avimelech and looking at his son Esav. Rav Amamachos. Looking at a rush is not good. When Rebbe left, Rebbe Yeshua, Amalei, Rebbe Barcheni, Rebbe tells Rebbe Yeshua, give me a bracha Amalei, Yirotzim, Shetagil Achatzi Yomai. It's a very stark relation. Halavai, you should live half my years. Ulukululai, what, I shouldn't live as long as you. Amalei, Haboy Macharecha, Behemo Yiru, you're Nasi, what are you going to do? You want to live long? Then your children are going to be shepherds, Amaratzim. You want them to take over your nesios. They should be like you. So it's good for you to die early. Two brothers. You know what my zchues is? I never looked at Ovid Avedizar. I didn't have a partnership with the guy. In other words, the Marsha explains, even in a situation where you're allowed to have a partnership, Even in that situation, he didn't have. Again, it's also to be angry. So even in a situation where you're allowed to be angry, to show your children, to teach them a lesson, whatever it is, to pretend, I never showed anger in my house. Again, you're not allowed to walk in front of a gadol, but in a situation you're allowed to. You're allowed to take one step. I didn't even do that. We learned this previously a number of times, and the big chiddush is as the next line. I never went 4 hours without Torah. Never. So can you imagine a person that 24/7 learns Torah, but yet when there's a pile of waste in the middle of the street, he's able to stop it? That's amazing. For us not to learn Torah in a bathroom, no. Fakert, it's hard for us to learn Torah in the bathroom. But somebody at 24/7, he never walked 4 hours in his life without Torah. For him to stop it is very chashuv. Not even a temporary sleep. I didn't take a little doze. So the Marsha again says over here, I wasn't happy when my friend stumbled. Well, of course, nobody should. Even when it was mutter, let's say you did a good deal with a frum guy. He had to sell his house at a loss because he's getting divorced or whatever. You're not allowed to be happy, even though halachically, okay, so you're happy, I got a great deal. But not on his cheshbon. Not when there's no isser here and you're not his enemy, but you're happy because he had a bad time and you got a good deal. Even that is awesome. I never called him a nickname. Or the reverse. The bottom line is, I didn't call him a bad nickname. I didn't call him a name that's actually, let's say, his family's name. Like I said yesterday, they used to call me in Yeshiva Steph. So there's different names like bro or dude, shorty. Shorty's a bad one. That's bad. Or I don't know, Speedy. There's a whole yeshiva, Rabbi Friedman, Gewaldike yeshiva. I love the yeshiva because they learn like an Amud Aleph and they do chazars. They're all masmidim, but they call them Speedy Freedy. That's a bad nickname. You're making fun of their Torah that they learn it on a quick pace, and they call him Speedy Freedy. He never did something like that. But we're talking about even when it's mutter, he also didn't. The official Mishnah is zechus Ruchni, Shimshon David Lipa, Yosef Yehuda, Yeshua Michal, Bnei Yehuda's Beila. You have a shul that is destroyed, you can't make a hesped inside. You need a very large room, you can't stretch out ropes. Great place to open up your nets. You can't. You can't use the rooftop even for fruit. You can't use it as a shortcut. Vashimois is a lotion of desolate. So even though your shul is desolate, it's still called mikdashechem. I have a picture here. Can't really share this picture, but here's a shul, and look, there's grass everywhere. You're not allowed to mow the lawn. Why? Because this lawn, says Rashi, is going to bring you to cry. You're going to say, wow, remember the days, this shul, we used to daven in Kippur here and there. Crying is a very, very powerful thing. And Memela, we want you to cry. As the Mishnah says, to cause you aggravation. I have a beautiful story here of some cipher, maybe I'll say it a different time because we're running out of time. In a shul, you can't act with kalas roish, meaning, you can't eat, you can't drink, and you can't look in the mirror and put on your suit and go like this and fix your tie and this and that. Don't do any exercise there. And don't show up because it's raining to take shelter. And you can't use it as a funeral home to give a hesped for an individual. You're allowed to learn Torah. Yes, it's a shul, but you obviously allowed to go upwards in Torah, as we had the machlokes. And if a gadol dies, you can make a hesped. This is all good when they're a regular shul, but once the shul is nechrav, it's destroyed, you just leave it and let the grass grow. Ask the Gemara, who mentioned the word grass? That was in the Mishnah. And the Brisa doesn't talk about grass. So the Gemara says, obviously you have to add in by yourself the wording. In a regular shul, you're allowed to sweep the floor and sprinkle it with water, and that prevents weeds and grass from growing. That's when you still use the shul. Oh, but once the shul is destroyed, you let the grass grow. We turn to Amud Beis, sponsored by Moshe Horn and Woody Wyman, and his zchues for Mordy Moskovitz, and in honor of Reb Eli for all that he does. If grass grows, you're not allowed to cut the grass. I saw Reb Yitzchak. I don't understand it at all. I'm just going to chazer over. He says in the kaisel, when those plants grow out of the kaisel, it's usher to chop them off. Based on this, to me, it's the opposite. But okay, agmas nefesh. He says, the shuls in Chutz La'aretz are made and built with a t'nai. In other words, I say I'm going to build a shul on condition that I can use it for mundane purposes like eating and drinking, making a kiddush. Says Taisvis, the reason why it says bebavel, he's medayik from the word bavel. That only works in Chutz La'aretz. But in Eretz Yisrael, since when Mashiach comes, the shuls are going to remain. Although we said that the shuls are going to be uprooted from Chutz La'aretz and be brought, he says it's only in Eretz Yisrael that the shul is going to remain forever. Memela, the t'nai doesn't work. So I saw something interesting that might help some people. The Devora Chaim says, why is it allowed to have a shtibel? Have a shtibel, you do all sorts of things in the shtibel. You sit and you schmooze, you drink coffee, you fabring with your friends. What's pshat? So the Devora Chaim says that when you build a shtibel, you build it as a home for the Rebbe, as a home for whatever. Derech Agav, I'm going to do one thing called davening. But the main purpose is to hang out. It's a hangout place. That's what he says. It's a place to get together and sing and get geschmack. Now, obviously, la halacha, it's much better to daven in a shul that has kedusha. In a big beis medrash that has kedusha, and you can't have kalos rosh. So then why do people daven in a shtibel? So it's based on the Radbaz. The Radbaz says that just like a person should learn Torah where liboy chafetz, wherever he feels like learning, so too davening. A person should daven where he feels comfortable. It's very interesting. So yes, la halacha, if you want to be makbid, you should go to the place that has the most people, the largest shul. But if it's so boring for you, and they don't sing nicely, and they don't do this, then you're probably better off in the shtibel that has less kedusha. Just don't forget that it has less kedusha. It's just better for you to daven there. Says the Gemara, yet, at the same time, you got to be careful not to do more than eating and drinking. So, doing like the calculations, in those days they didn't have calculators and all that, so you're going to sit there and do mundane things like calculations for the tzibur, that's no good. Certainly, other things is of course also, even cheshbonos. If you do calculations, malinum boy esames, you put the dead people in there. As the Gemara, let's just understand what it means. Malinum sokadayach, what? Because you were over and you did cheshbonos, so that's why it should become a morgue. Says Gemara, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because you were over, you know what your punishment is going to be? It's going to end up being a morgue. You're going to find a dead person that has no family, nobody's claiming the body, so you're going to use the shul as a morgue. And that's because of a punishment, because you used it previously for calculations. A Talmud Chacham could use a beis medrash for whatever he wants. The Mishul ben Levi might be Rabbanon. Why is it called the house of a Chacham? Based on the Rabbanon. He's there all day long. So let him eat a sandwich there. Yes, it's a tuna sandwich. It smells real bad, but it's his house. So maybe it's his house. He's there all day. He eats it. You don't use a shul to protect you from the rain and from the sun. You had these two. They were asking questions from Rava. Also, zilcha the mitra. All of a sudden, started to pour. They ran into the shul. Amri hoda aylin lebei knishta la mishum mitra. El mishum de shmaita boyet zilusa kiyomi de istana. So, it wasn't an excuse. They were talking and learning. It's pouring on their head. They couldn't concentrate. So because they couldn't concentrate, they went to the shul, but they didn't want you to think that we're using the shul as protection from the rain. We're using the shul to improve our learning. Learning has to be clear, like a clear day, a northern wind. Yeah, you learn in a nice base medrash, a nice air conditioner, a comfortable chair. You have to be comfortable. You need to call somebody out of a shul. What do you do? If he's a big Talmud Chacham, so it goes in order. We're starting from the top. Somebody that knows halachas, if he's not such a Talmud Chacham, he's a Tana. Not a Tana like we call a Tana like Rebbe Kiva, but somebody that's familiar with Mishnayos. Let him say over Mishnah. Vikarohu, he's even a less madreg. All he knows is Chumash. He's a Chumash Yid. Let him psuka. Let him say V'daber Shema Moshe Leimar. V'loi. So I think today what we do is, I didn't look up the halacha, but I know people walk into shul. They're not going to daven, so they sit down on a bench and they say Ashri Yeshua Yisacha. They say a pasuk. Fine. Inami nisha purta v'neikum. So either you tell a kid to say something in learning if you don't know how to learn, or you have to pause. You wait there. What does it mean? A hesped of a large group. What does it mean? So you have Rav Chisda and Rav Sheshes standing together, and they ask them the question. Rav Chisda points at Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes points at Rav Chisda. So the Gemara explains, Rav from gave a hesped to his daughter-in-law. Nebuch, she was nifter young. Now, his daughter-in-law is not the biggest tzaddikus in the world. You're not going to have a hesped of 100,000 people. But he says, Omar Mishum Yikar Didi Udemisa, Reb Chaim Kanievsky is given a hesped. When he gives a hesped, if he ever gave one, the Chavetz Chaim is giving a hesped on his son-in-law. So maybe they'll come for his son-in-law also. But most likely, people are going to come to hear the Chavetz Chaim speaking. So that's a hesped of Rabbim. Yikar Didi Udemisa Osukuli Alma. Reb Zera Savdei Le'um Rabbanim Beiknishna. Reb Zera gave a hesped to this Talmud Chacham from the shul. Omar, imishum yikar didi, imishum yikar didei. Together, we're going to combine for a nice tzibur here. Also kulei the day the misa for the mace, then everybody's going to come. Rish Lakish says the Gemara, Savdei le'utzur mirabanan the shchiach bar di Yisrael. The Talmud Chacham used to travel a lot to Eretz Yisrael. Davatani Yilchasa bebezdin bechov dalid shurasa. He was able to give, one pshat is, he gave shiurim to 24 rows of Talmidim. He's a Talmud Chacham, pretty big up there. Omar, and he said in his hesped, Vai chosra the Yisrael gav Rabba. What a shame. Eretz Yisrael lost a great man. But you have to remember this. Rish Lakish gave a hesped to a pretty decent Talmud Chacham. There's another person who learned all these things. Sifra, Sifri, Tesefta, and he was nifter. Could you please give a hesped? Omar Hecht, what should I say? The Moli Sifri de Chaser. But boy said, for this we have to look in Rashi. Look at Rashi, smack in the middle of the page. Heitzana Moli Sifri. Eino Yelo Kesal Shemilu Svarim. This individual that was just nifter is like a basket that's filled up with books, with Svarim, not books, Svarim. However, the owner, this Talmud Chacham that was nifter, he doesn't understand anything. He never learned by Talmid Chachamim to understand the reasoning behind the Mishnah. Rabbi said, this Rashi is explaining why we learn Gemara. Sometimes the Mishnah contradicts another Mishnah. You have to explain it. and this individual never did. Sometimes the Gemara says, and this is what it's talking about. Or the Gemara says, no, it goes according to this mandamar. And Rabbi Isai, what we just had a few minutes ago. A few words are missing, which always means not missing. We're not going to put those words in. But anybody that's a Talmud Chacham understands that when we're talking about grass, you have to understand we're talking about something else beforehand. You stick in a few things and then you understand everything. And I can't give this guy a hesped. You believe it? Safra, free, all these things. I'm not giving him a hesped. He doesn't know all the reasoning behind all the stuff. No way. Says Gemara, look, ma bent kifi the Ardi Yisrael Chasida de Bavel. So Rashi brings an unbelievable story we had in Yuma just recently. Rish Lakish wouldn't talk to Rabbi Baruch Hana. Now, who's Rabbi Baruch Hana? From Brachas Daf Amud Beis, the golden dove. Rabbi Baruch Hana. Rish Lakish wouldn't talk to him because if Rish Lakish would speak to anyone, then they would lend that person money without Eidim. So Rish Lakish, who's makbid, he doesn't talk to Gadol B'Yisrael, Rabbi Baruch Hana. Yet, he was maspid some sort of Talmud Chacham to give the covet to the Talmud Chacham. Yet Rav Nachman was considered Yazir Shamayim or Ana, Rashi brings. He wouldn't give a hesped. So look at the difference between the takiv of Eretz Yisrael. You can't talk to me. If I'm spoken to you, people are going to lend you money without Eidim. Can't talk to me. I don't communicate with humans. To the chassid of Bavel, yet the takiv of Eretz Yisrael does give a hesped. The chassid of Bavel doesn't. Tanan awesome. Udishtamish b'toga chalaf. If you use your Torah chalaf, Hashem is gonna take you away. This is a person who uses somebody else who knows Mishnayis Kisr Torah. It's better to use somebody that learned 4 Sdarim in Shisha Sidri Mishnah. But don't use the Rebbe that taught it. He was walking and there's water. Story, unbelievable. He grabs Rish Lakish, imagine the zchues. He puts his head under, lifts him up on his shoulder. And he takes him across. That was the way they used to do it. Give the guy covered. Take the galador on your shoulders. While they're going across the water, Rish Lakish tells the man, Omar Lei Karisa, you learn Torah? Omar Lei Karina, yes. Tanisa, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm serious, I just thought about it now. I do this all the time to people. You learn? Literally, I don't know the guy. I just met him. Shalom Aleichem, how you doing? You learn the daf? You learn Torah in your day? Good, okay. You don't? You got to join the share. You got to start up conversations with people, schlep them into Torah. Tanisa, you learn Mishnayis? Tanina Arba Siddur Mishnah, yeah, I learned 4 halakim, 4 parts of it. Omalei oivei, bad news. Pesaltalach arba turei v'tantebarish lokish akatvach. How could I go on your shoulders? You're Talmud Chacham. You learned 4 Sdarim. Shadi bar lekisha b'maya. Throw me into the water. Omalei nichli dashmin lamar. What? No. I love taking you. I want to take you. So he says, Ihachi gemar mini hamilsa. You know what? Let me be your Rebbe for a second. How will I do that? I'm going to teach you one thing. I'll be your Rebbe, and if I'm your Rebbe, I could be on your shoulder. Hamilsa d'Amar Reb Zei Rabbeinu Yisrael, hey nichmira alatzim shafilu rois tipas dam kechardel yoshvis olav shivanikim. The halacha is that a woman who sees a tiny amount of dam, she's tmeya. But to make her like a zava, we learned the halachas of ziva before in this Masechta. We're not going to go into it now. But to make a woman that she has to keep 7 clean days with 1 drop of dam, that's already a chumrah. That's what we do today. Then we're machmir like a zava, g'doila. To make her into a zava g'doila, even though it's only 1 drop, that's a chumrah. And now I became your Rebbe because I taught you this halacha. If you learn halachas every day, you become a ben olam haba, meaning you learn the daf every single day, every day, even Yom Kippur. Shenemar halichos olam loy, atiku halichos elo halachos. Have a wonderful day.